and also in society. You can't grow exponentially without having some growth pains. And this year you will be hearing about changes that we've made in the meeting that should make it more comfortable for everybody here. There's over 8,000 of you. For more than 30 years, this meeting has prepared the world for big data, even before there was any big data, and how to navigate high-dimensional spaces. That was before computer memories were big enough to hold them. The MIT Press recently published a book that I wrote on the history of this community and some of our accomplishments. Check out their booth in the sponsor room. The 11 board members of the foundation are former general chairs of meetings, past meetings. As a new general chair joins the board, the oldest rotates off the board into an advisory board. And in this way, we have current knowledge of the meeting, because things evolve very rapidly in our field, but also we have institutional memory to help us understand where we came from. A new organizing committee is chosen every year to organize the meeting, which has become a more and more challenging undertaking. The first meeting had 400 people, and it was a lot easier for me to organize that meeting than it is for Sammy, dealing with a lot more concerns than we had to worry about back then. However, the organizing committee is not responsible for decisions made by the Board of Trustees. So he's starting with a fresh slate. Let's now hear from the organizing committee chairs about changes we've made this year and the extraordinary meeting that they have planned for us this week. Sammy.
Thank you, Terry. I'm very glad to be here. It's an impressive crowd in front of me. I'm a bit impressed, but let's start on. I'm very happy to welcome you to NeurIPS 2018. And first of all, welcome to Montreal. I love Montreal. I lived 25 years in Montreal. I'm very happy that it happens here today and this week. Sometimes it snows, sometimes it doesn't. We'll see, but enjoy the snow if it comes. Organizing a conference like NeurIPS is not easy. There's a lot of people involved. There's 15 people involved. It's like a village. We have to talk to each other. My role as a general chair was first to name most of these people, choose the right ones. They were great. Some of them will talk to you in a few minutes. And second of all, to be like the one that tries to communicate and organize all these things between them and make sure that all the decisions are taken, and then talk to the board to make sure that everything is smooth and flows well. So I'd like to thank all of them for what they have done. So there's a list here. You have the program chair, Hannah, the co-chairs, Hugo, Kristen, and Nicolo, tutorial chairs, Jen and Samuel, workshop chairs, Joachim and Suchi, demonstration and competition chairs, Ralph and Sergio, press chairs, Neil and Kathy, publication chair, Roman, diversity and inclusion chairs are new this year. They will talk right after me, Hal and Kat. We also have a party chairs. There are two, Doug and Pablo. We have a new workflow engineer who's like a more stable person who will stay over every year to help us with all the technical details, Jeshuran. And we have our crew this year of volunteer workflow team, Trapit, Mathieu, and Chinmay. So all these people made this week possible in terms of the content. So I'd like to thank all of them if possible. Of course, we need people who stay from year to year to actually do the hard work of putting all this together. And that's Mary-Hélène, Lee, Terry, the board, and many other people, Andrea, that I missed. So we also need really to thank them because they are the history and the strength of the conference. So we're going to soon hear about diversity and inclusion and then about the actual program. But I just wanted to highlight a few things that happened this year that are different from previous years. We had an Expo Day. If you happened to attend, that was yesterday. It was the first time we did it. There were many companies involved in that, so 15 talks, demonstrations, workshops. Today at the tutorial, I hope you enjoyed the day. There were 9 tutorials. 4 of them were accepted out of a set of 36 submitted, and then we had 5 invited tutorials. We will have later this week workshops. There were 118 workshops submitted. We accepted 39 of them for mostly space reasons. There are also competitions that are going to be presented with the workshops. We had 21 submissions of competition, and we accepted 8. There are going to be demonstrations shown during the poster sessions. We are going to show 20 of them out of 76 submitted. And we also have a lot of satellite events that are promoting a lot of diversity this year. So we have WIML that we've been working with for many years. We have Black in AI. We also had them last year. And now this year, we also have Latinx and Queer in AI. And so that's going to be a very interesting. If you have time to attend these satellite events, I strongly favor to at least visit them and see what they are up to. That's going to be very interesting. So with that, I'd like to welcome Hal and Kat, who will talk mostly about the diversity and inclusion work that has been done this year. It's new. We didn't have that in previous years, but this year we decided it was time to actually discuss this difficult topic. So.
Hi, I'm Catherine Heller. I'm faculty at Duke University, also a research scientist at Google Medical Brain. I do Bayesian machine learning, Bayesian statistical machine learning research, and I apply it mostly to the medical domain, and I've been coming here to NeurIPS for about 15 years now.
Hi, I'm Hal Damé. I've also been coming here for about 15 years. I work mostly in natural language processing, learning from interaction, and recently some stuff in fairness and machine learning. So over the next 10 minus epsilon minutes, we're going to talk about diversity and inclusion, stuff that we've done this year, stuff that we'd like to see in the future. And I guess just to set the stage, some of the topics around diversity and inclusion are challenging, and so I appreciate that we have the time to talk about this. Before going forward, I think it's important that Kat and I explicitly recognize the respective privilege that each of us has. So as a white man and woman from US institutions, we're afforded significant advantages. And as a group, the two of us don't reflect the diversity of experience in this room, much less the world. We've done our best to listen so that we can be the best advocates possible for everyone. And where we've failed, we hope to have learned. So with that, let's start briefly with why are we here. So as Terry mentioned, machine learning has just grown hugely over the past 5 years. And it's had huge impacts on society, and they're not slowing down. Because of this impact, it's imperative that we provide opportunity for everyone to take part in this community. We've used this year largely to take stock of where we are. We've basically had 3 goals. The first is to learn about challenges that our colleagues have faced. The second is to support those doing the hard work of amplifying the voices of those who have been historically excluded. And third, to begin structural changes that we hope will positively impact the community over the coming years. Part of our goal here is to listen to and uplift as many voices as possible, and as part of this, we need to acknowledge that there are many members of the community who can't even be in this room with us today. This could have happened due to travel difficulties or costs, due to job or domestic responsibilities, or due to difficulties obtaining visas.
Okay, so we're all complex people, particularly in this field, and it's easy to struggle to see the perspectives of others around us. So I'm reminded of this incident from when I was pregnant. I had someone say to me, I wish that I was the pregnant one here, and that way people would open the door for me. And I think it's very easy for all of us to focus on the very visible benefit of having the door open for you, and not so much on the downsides of pregnancy, like vomiting over the toilet every morning. In the same way, it's really easy to feel slighted by a benefit that's given to any minority group while overlooking the very serious downsides that they face. Secondly, there's a strong message sent by society that no one wants to hear about you vomiting over the toilet, or your sexual abuse, or your bullying. But these need to be part of the conversation for people to truly understand what's going on. Ask other people about the things that have happened to them in their lives, and listen with an open mind. Lastly, people have told us that to feel special, they feel like they need to be gay, or black, or a woman. But I'm here to say that we're all special, and we all need to recognize that there are downsides for other people, no matter who we are, and to step in and defend those in a minority, those who need their voices amplified, and to look out for one another.
So with that as background, what have we actually been doing over the past 9 or 10 months? So the first part of things that we've done are really focused on the understanding part that Kat mentioned. We assembled an advisory board to help broaden our admittedly narrow experience. And second, we ran a demographics and inclusion survey that many of you may have participated in. We don't have time to go into the details of the results, but many of the concrete actions that I'll mention in a second arose from the survey. You can find the full report on my GitHub account and the links on the slide. Also, the slides are available if people want them. Oops. Okay, so the third thing we've done is we've served as a bit of an interface between the affinity workshops and the affinity groups and the main conference. So this includes WIML, which took place today. There's still an opportunity to get a few hours of WIML in at the end after this event. The second is Black in AI. So Black in AI is happening on Friday from 9 to 5:30. I encourage everyone to go. The third is Latinx in AI. Latinx in AI is happening on Saturday in room 503. And then the last is Queer in AI. Queer in AI is also happening on Saturday. It is not happening in this venue. It's happening in one of the adjacent hotels. So if you're interested in going, be sure that you look up where the hotel is. Okay, so back to our list. So the last thing in the understanding column is with the goal of understanding the community, there will be a town hall tomorrow to gather information from you about inclusion efforts and to answer questions you may have. We've also taken several concrete steps this year or supported others in taking these steps. So we arranged with Google and DeepMind for childcare subsidies to reimburse costs. And then we've also arranged for some activities. So if you have a child who's between the ages of 5 and 12 who wants to learn to code, go to the Kitty Core desk and ask them about information. We have an amazing speaker coming up next. So Laura Gomez will talk about accountability and algorithmic bias and why diversity and inclusion matters. Together with ICML and the board, we revised the code of conduct for this conference. It's available on the homepage, and everyone here, as part of your reservation, should have clicked a little checkbox that says that you agree to it. That may have been a while ago, so it might not be a bad idea to go reread it and remember what it was that you agreed to. Echoing what Kat said, one of the sort of substantial topics in the Code of Conduct has to do with harassment and bullying. And one thing that we'd like to encourage is that if you observe harassment or bullying and it's safe for you to speak up about it, that's a significant way in which you can reduce the burden on others. Now, if you're a non-confrontational introvert like me, that sounds very scary. And so it can be useful to have sort of go-to stock phrases like, we don't do that here, or that's not cool, or that's not as funny as you think it is, as things that you can practice saying and then get in the habit of saying. So expanding on these ideas, in an effort to get the community on the same page and acknowledging past issues of sexual harassment, bullying, and other unwelcome behavior, there's the ML Ally Pledge that anyone here can sign. Being an ally isn't a badge you wear. It's really about concrete actions that you take. And so if you're interested in some concrete action ideas, you can look at our Twitter thread, which has some concrete things you can do every day of the conference. We'd encourage you to sign it if it's something that you're willing to actually do the work to do. And we have stickers. If you want the stickers, you can have them too. Even if you don't sign the pledge, still check out the Twitter thread to see some ideas of things you can do to help improve the conference experience for others. You might have noticed by the registration desk there are stickers you can affix to the bottom of your badge. Oh, I don't have my badge on, to tell other people what pronouns to use to refer to you. So I chose the he, him sticker so that you all know to say, do you know that Hal guy? He doesn't like to wear shoes. Although I am wearing shoes because it's like an important event. And finally, because we really like stickers, there are some for first-time attendees. I encourage you, if you feel comfortable, to put these on your badge. And if you're not a first-time attendee, find some first-time attendees and introduce yourselves. Ask them about their research interests. Introduce them to your friends. And last, we've assembled information on needs that conference participants might have related to accessibility or nursing or meditation or prayer. And this can all be found on our webpage. Oh, sorry, there was animation that I forgot about. There we go. All right.
Okay, so there have been very significant issues with obtaining visas this year, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. It involves many people from all over, but maybe particularly involving those people in our community who are from Africa, including one of my own students, actually. About half of the over 200 people seeking visas at Black and AI have not been able to obtain them yet. For scientific exchange to be truly open, it's essential that everybody in the field is able to come together and share ideas. This year, we saw the importance of this in stark relief as many of our colleagues who had accepted work and presentations at the conference and our co-located workshops were not able to join us because of delayed and refused visas. This is not acceptable. Diversity and inclusion are key for all fields of science, but ours especially because of the power of the tools that it creates. The research we do and share here can be used to build a better world, but we can only truly make sure that everybody benefits if we're able to draw from a diversity of thought, experience, and background. We need to work hard to make sure our ideas are not stopped by any borders, national, social, or economic, because surely their impacts won't be. We have made great progress, but we have to work harder to make sure that diversity and inclusion aren't just words we pay lip service to, but are ideas that we take action on every day. Okay, so I'm also going to talk about where we're going in the future so that you can see where the NeurIPS conference needs to be, in our opinion, having looked at some of the things we have. Okay, so there needs to be more legal structure and governance surrounding the Code of Conduct. How do we enforce it? It should be revised based on community feedback. Please provide this feedback to us. We need formal structures that support diversity and inclusion. We need to ask hard questions about how the conference is organized and how it's set up, how to set up formal structures to support diversity and inclusion. Improving transparency, in particular, to enable better dialogue with the community is top of our agenda. All of the things we did this year are just the start. In order to have lasting impact, they need to be institutionalized. We need to include things like pronouns, food preferences, and accessibility needs in the registration form, improve baby care and other rooms, and we need to continue making progress on childcare and accessibility. And we need to do a better job of coordinating the affinity groups in their events and asking hard questions about how to balance all the needs of an increasingly diverse and complex community.
So with that, we just want to wrap up with some thanks. So our main gratitude goes to our advisory panel, which is William Agnew, Timnit Gebru, Shakir Mohammed, and Alice O. They have been amazing in providing feedback and pushing back when they thought we were going in the wrong direction. We're also grateful to Umberto Corona and Barbara Engelhardt, who are diversity and inclusion chairs for past conferences, and who worked with us a lot in trying to make things happen this year. Finally, thanks to Laura Montoya and Allison Cheney, to Sammy and Hannah for being wonderful chairs, to the rest of the organizing committee, and the full WIML board for support. And then personally, I'd like to thank Kat, who has been like a totally awesome co-chair.
And thank you to Hal, because he's been equally, if not more, awesome.
And so with that, if you don't remember anything from this talk, here's the cheat sheet. Listen to others, make an effort, and speak up.
Okay. Hey, everyone. Welcome to NeurIPS. All right. It's awesome to see so many people here today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Hannah Wallach. I'm a principal researcher at Microsoft Research in New York, and I am the program chair for this year's NeurIPS. This is also my 17th time at the conference, so there we go. When I accepted the program chair position, the first thing that I did was to find 3 truly awesome co-chairs, Niccolo Cesabianchi, Kristen Grahman, and Hugo La Rochelle. And all 3 of them are really incredible people. Not only are they exceptional machine learning researchers, they're also unbelievably organized and super fun to work with. They've put in countless hours over the past year to really make this conference a success, and I'm extremely grateful to them for all of their hard work. So, we're going to start by thanking all the people who helped us organize the program for this year's main conference. There are plenty of other people that we're not going to be specifically acknowledging, and we are incredibly grateful to them as well. Okay, so first we want to thank our awesome volunteer workflow team, Trapit Bansal, Matthew Germain, and Chinmay Singh. Their dedication and commitment over the past year really made our lives much easier, and there's just no way we could have organized this conference without them. Second, we'd like to thank the permanent NeurIPS team, starting with Jesharan Thangaraj, who joined over the summer as a permanent workflow engineer. And since joining, he's been a really invaluable addition to our workflow team. We also want to thank Mary Ellen and Lee Campbell, who patiently answered all of our various annoying questions, handled literally all of the conference logistics, and made sure that we didn't overlook anything along the way. They're really amazing. Next, we'd like to thank this year's General Chair, Sammy Bengio. Sammy is just awesome. He was also the voice of reason throughout the year, answering questions and patiently serving as a sounding board for a number of our decisions. We're also really grateful to the NeurIPS publication chair, Roman Garnett. It's thanks to Roman that the style files worked, including the updated ones just this past week, that the camera-ready process ran smoothly, and that the proceedings look nice. Of course, we'd also like to thank Terry and the rest of the NeurIPS board, who've been incredibly supportive over the year. I would also personally like to thank Baboon, our cuteness chair, who lives with Hugo, And on many an occasion, when things were going less than smoothly with the review process, Baboon appeared either in photos or video chats to cheer us all up. Okay, but more seriously, we'd like to thank all of the reviewers, especially those who wrote last-minute reviews, the area chairs, the senior area chairs, and, crucially, the authors. Without them, the conference wouldn't exist. Okay, so next we're going to tell you a little bit about this year's conference. So as you know, this is the biggest NeurIPS yet, with around 8,500 registrations. That said, you'll see from this graph that this number is pretty similar to last year's number of registrations. Don't worry, I want to reassure all of you, this is not due to lack of interest. This is simply due to venue capacity. And to reiterate this point, this year's conference sold out in 11 minutes and 38 seconds. Just as a point of comparison for you, in case you were wondering, that's faster than this year's Burning Man, 30 minutes, but not as fast as a Beyoncé concert, 30 seconds. More seriously, though, a big part of the reason that it sold out so fast this year was that there were many more registrations reserved for authors, reviewers, area chairs, senior area chairs, and underrepresented groups than in previous years. So we think that this year's conference is going to be the best one yet. First, we have 7 super amazing invited speakers. We've also made a number of schedule changes to try to maximize awesomeness for you all. So first, the main conference will be 3 full days rather than 2.5. Second, we have 3 parallel tracks of talks rather than 2. And finally, we have 6 poster sessions this year instead of 3. And the poster sessions will be held during the days instead of the evenings. With that, I would like to hand over to Kristen, who will tell you about this year's review process, starting with submissions.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Kristen Grauman. I'll talk about the submissions and the review process. First, we manage the submission and review process using the Conference Management Toolkit, or CMT. We're really grateful to the CMT developers because they implemented a lot of functionality specifically for us. Okay, after deleting test submissions, submissions with no PDF, and so on, we ended up with 4,854 papers to be sent out for review. This was a record-breaking number of submissions, a 50% increase over last year and twice as many submissions as this year's ICML. And just to put that 50% increase into perspective, the difference between the number of submissions last year and the number of submissions this year is equal to the total number of submissions in 2014. So, what are these submissions about? To help us assign submissions to appropriate reviewers and area chairs, we asked authors to tag their submissions with 10 top-level subject areas and 156 lower-level subject areas, slightly revamped from last year's. Here are the number of submissions for each of the 10 top-level areas. Amazingly, deep learning did not receive the most submissions. Also, reinforcement learning and planning was much more popular than last year. We asked authors a number of questions about their submissions during the submission process. Through these questions, we found that 26% of submissions were resubmissions. We also found that 69% of submissions said that they would release code if accepted, while 42% of submissions said they would release data. All right, so what about the reviews? This year, we invited 4,834 people to serve as reviewers, ranging from senior PhD students to full professors or the industry equivalent. This resulted in 3,045 reviewers, a 45% increase over last year. Where possible, we tried to ensure that reviewers had published in top-tier venues such as NeurIPS, ICML, CVPR, ACL, and so on. These reviewers were overseen by 242 area chairs, which is an increase of 32% over last year. When selecting these area chairs, we tried as best as possible to ensure diversity along a variety of different axes. Finally, we had 35 senior area chairs, each responsible for managing roughly 7 area chairs. Like last year, the conference was double-blind, at the level of reviewers and the level of area chairs, but not at the level of senior area chairs. The senior area chairs helped us identify conflicts of interest and helped us calibrate scores across area chairs during the final decision-making process. Again, when selecting senior area chairs, we tried to ensure diversity. Like last year, we used a mixed integer linear program written by Sammy Bengio to assign submissions to reviewers and area chairs, and to assign area chairs to senior area chairs. This enabled us to satisfy a number of constraints during the assignment process, such as the number of reviewers from any institution assigned to each submission, number of submissions assigned to each reviewer or area chair, and the balance between positive and negative bids. We also augmented conflicts of interest stated by authors with additional conflicts derived from co-authorship information from the past 3 years, kindly provided by A Minor. And in addition to subject areas, we relied on information about submission content provided by the Toronto paper matching system. We also completely redid the reviewer guidelines for this year with a large amount of help from Dee Scully and Jasper Snook. At the end of the reviewing process, we ended up with just under 15,000 reviews, at least 3 per submission, and in a few cases 4 or 5. We also ended up with 17,000 discussion posts on CMT. We asked reviewers a number of questions during the review process. First, we asked reviewers whether they had previously reviewed or area chaired each of their assigned submissions for another conference or journal. We found that 18% of resubmissions had been previously reviewed or area chaired by one or more of their reviewers. We also asked reviewers how confident they were that each of their assigned submissions could be reproduced by others, assuming equal access to data and resources. Of the 15,000 reviews, we found that 85% indicated that the reviewer responsible was somewhat or very confident that the corresponding submission could indeed be reproduced by others. I'm now going to hand over to Hugo.
Okay, so let's talk about acceptances. So after a set of meetings with the 35 senior area chairs where we're trying to agree on decisions and try to be as calibrated as we could, we ended up with 1,010 accepted papers. And that corresponds to an increase of 49% over last year that you're seeing here in this graph. And these papers, they corresponded to 30 accepted as oral, 168 as spotlights, and then 812 as posters only. And so overall, with 4,854 submissions, that makes for an acceptance rate of 21%, which is about the same as last year. If you're wondering how that varies across subject areas, we're not going to show all the 156, but for the top 10 top-level areas, you're seeing the acceptance rates here, and generally speaking, they're comparable across areas. We also calculated the acceptance rate for resubmissions, and we found that to be 25%. We also looked at whether that changed, whether at least one of the reviewers had previously reviewed or area chaired that paper at another conference, and that didn't really vary. It was either 26% or 24%. Of the accepted papers, 44% actually provided the link to code or data during the camera-ready process. Notice that this is less than what was declared in the overall submissions. We also, much like last year, looked at various statistics related to putting papers on archive, which people could declare when they submitted, or on social media and so on. So 56% of submissions were reported as being posted online, which is actually a significant increase over last year. Last year was 43%. So we also asked reviewers whether they had seen their assigned submissions online. And we found that submissions that were reported as posted online, so 35% had been seen by one or more of the reviewers. All right, so then we can start comparing acceptance rate based on these quantities. As a reminder, we're talking about an overall acceptance rate of 21%. So now if we look at the acceptance rate for submissions that weren't reported as being posted online, we get 16%. So as you notice, this is 5% lower than the overall acceptance rate. And this is about 1% higher than the same quantity as measured last year. Now, also, we looked at the acceptance rate for submissions that were reported as posted online, but not seen by any of the reviewers as they declared it. And that's 20%, which is about the same acceptance rate as the overall. It's also 5% lower than the same quantity as calculated last year. And then we can look at the acceptance rate for submissions that were reported as posted online and seen by at least one of the reviewers, and that's 34%. And that's 1% lower than the same quantity last year, so about the same, and obviously higher than the overall acceptance rate. Now, that said, as most people know here, it's hard to take any causal conclusions from observational data. There are various explanations that one could give to these numbers. Maybe reviewers think more positive submissions that are posted online, or maybe some of these submissions were more polished, or a mixture of both, or some other completely different explanation. So we do caution people for reading too much from these numbers. It is sort of interesting that these quantities have, except for the total number of papers that have been posted online, has not really varied from last year. And now I'll hand it over to Nicolo.
Hi. So before wrapping up, I want to tell you something about the awards and announce this year's awards at NeurIPS. So one of the many changes we implemented this year was to ask area chairs to rate each review as exceeding expectations, met expectations, or failed to meet expectations. And then we used these scores to identify the highest scoring reviewers. And of these, 218 were awarded free registration, and 732 were awarded the reserved registration, which is also a precious item. And we also want to thank Dee Scully and Jasper Snook for suggesting the idea of reserving registration for high-scoring reviewers. So now we are delighted to announce that there are 4 Best Paper Awards this year. We've been generous. And these papers were selected by the Best Paper Award Committee on the basis of area chair and senior area chair nominations, high scores, and strong reviews. And you can read the names of the committee on the slide. So in order of when they will be presented at the conference, these are the 4 papers. The first one is Neural Ordinary Differential Equations by Ricky Chen, Yulia Rubanova, Jess Bedancourt, and David Duvaneau. A round of applause. And okay, this paper will be presented tomorrow at 3:50 p.m. in room 220E. The second one is nearly tight sample complexity bounds for learning mixtures of Gaussians via sample compression schemes by Hassan Ashtiani, Shaiben David, Nick Harvey, Christopher Liu, Abbas Merabian, and Yaniv Plan. And this paper will be presented on Wednesday at 10:05 a.m. in room 517 CD. So the third paper is Optimal Algorithms for Non-Smooth Distributed Optimization in Networks by Kevin Scaman, Francis Bach, Sébastien Bubec, Laurent Massoulier, and Itant Lee. And this paper will be presented on Thursday at 3:50 p.m. in room 517 CD. Finally, the fourth is Non-Delusional Q-Learning and Value Iteration by Tyler Liu, Dale Schurmans, and Craig Boutillier. So this paper will be presented on Thursday at 4:25 in room 220 CD, and we do want to point out that there's been a schedule change because of overlapping between Best Paper Awards. So this is not a time that is listed on the printed booklet. Okay? So, like last year, we decided also to have a Test of Time award, and this year's winning paper was selected by the Test of Time Award Committee, whose names you can read over there, from a short list of highly cited NeurIPS papers from around 10 years ago. And the winner is The Trade-Offs of Large-Scale Learning by Léon Bottou, Olivier Bousquet. Yeah. So the authors will be giving a short talk about this paper and its impact over the 10 past years tomorrow at 9:20. Don't miss it. And that's all. We really hope you will enjoy the conference. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce our speaker. Comes next, Laura Gomez. Laura is the founder and CEO of Atypica, a venture-based startup and a founding member of Project Include. She's worked at Google, YouTube, Jawbone, and Twitter, where she was a founding member of the international team, leading Twitter's product expansion to 50 languages and dozens of countries. She's involved in the Tech Women program and serves on the board of the Institute for Technology and Public Policy. Laura is going to talk to us today about accountability and algorithmic bias, why diversity and inclusion matters. Let's please welcome Laura.
Hello. Okay, great. It's not showing. Yeah, it's not showing. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. As Catherine said, my name is Laura Gomez, and I'm very happy and honored to be here. I'm not here to shame anyone, and I'm not here to actually talk about the importance of diversity and inclusion. Obviously, you will hear from the committee chairs tomorrow, but I will more talk about why I have a startup that's called Inclusive AI and why I think this is important, and talk a little bit about me. I tend to put myself in difficult situations, including speaking here. I don't think it'll be as difficult as Elon Musk last year, but here I am. And here, why do I think this is really important? Why is it that I traveled all the way from the Bay Area to be here? I do believe, and I actually agree to Sophia Noble, who wrote a book called Algorithms of Oppression, and talking about how artificial intelligence will become a major human rights issue in the 21st century. And we're not talking about it right now. We should be. Because everyone that's not in this room and anyone that is either an underrepresented group feels like artificial intelligence is actually a monster that's going to take over our lives or automate our jobs. So it really is important to try to make sure that we are having those conversations, those difficult conversations about where AI is heading, specifically where we should hold each other and ourselves accountable. I'm not here to actually vilify AI, because I do believe AI is a very beautiful thing. Otherwise, I am all about very Baroque art. So I if it wasn't for machine learning, they wouldn't have correlated these two pieces of art that are like hundreds of years apart. And so you see in the yellow is actually the composition. You see the red and the blue squares, actually thinking about all the structural similarities that an art historian wouldn't have caught manually. So I do think the machine learning and AI are bringing us to the next level, but we need to understand what else are we doing outside the beauty of our field. So first, you might be wondering, why is she speaking here? So here, I'm going to go into me. That's me. I was born in Mexico. I was born in León, Guanajuato, Mexico. Are there any Mexicans? Yeah, one. I am the more fashionable child on this photo against my poor sister. And so, as many, I am also an immigrant. I immigrated with my family to the United States, to the heart of Silicon Valley. So my experience has been in Silicon Valley. I grew up in the 90s where access to computers and engineering was not something that was so foreign to me. That being said, people that looked like me weren't in the field, and therefore I was almost of the time felt not myself. And why am I here? So first, it's Canada. And second, I really do believe this is a very beautiful city. And third, I've never really had practiced my French from high school, so I'm trying my best. I do, what is Atypica and what is, how am I the CEO and founder? As I said, I put myself in difficult conversations and situations, and if it wasn't for a panel 4 years ago with leaders of Facebook and Google of diversity and inclusion and the American civil rights leader, Reverend Jesse Jackson, I was at Stanford Law on this panel talking about diversity and inclusion, and I threw out a question. I said, you have the best data scientists. You are creating a self-driving car, and yet you can't figure out diversity and inclusion through AI. And no one in my panel actually was able to answer. So I decided, being who I am and feeling myself as someone that's always on difficult situations, I decided to start a startup. First, being a solo founder, and then second, in a field that I wasn't very comfortable or knowledgeable in, but I knew that data was going to really make an impact. The other two, I didn't really have any control. I didn't control the fact that I'm a female founder, and I didn't control that I am a Latina looking for investment in Silicon Valley. And if anyone ever feels like that they have a challenge, try to raise investment from venture capitalists while you're a solo female founder with an accent. I'm also a founding advisor of Project Include. These were alongside Ellen Powell and other amazing 7 women that we have a collective 145 years of experience in tech, in venture capital, and as engineers. And so we decided that we didn't want to talk about it. We wanted to actually build something. So we built a startup, a nonprofit, and it's projectinclude.org. And not only that, we have 110 pages on how to really move the needle in diversity and inclusion. Obviously, it's really, really important for us to not only talk about it, but to actually do something and make recommendations. And I came here because I do my best to research all of the conferences I speak at. And I'm more important about whether this is something in parallel and is actually something important within my own convictions and values. And I think after knowing that there was a change into how this conference is addressing diversity and inclusion, I thought should come. And I needed to actually be sure to be one of the first people to say, after the tough conversations, we need to move forward. So my wish is for all of you after my talk to evaluate your role in AI bias and inclusion, and it's not just inclusion of your dating sets, but also all your inclusion and who you're talking to and who you're hiring or who you're teaching if you're a professor here, and how are you encouraging people to stay in the field. To find the empathy and value, as I said, in difficult conversations. I think I've had really a lot of tough conversations with my investors, with my peers who are founders, and I think that there's always progress to be done, but as long as we're empathetic in the process. And that we don't think about this just at this conference, but we're thinking about it, the companies, the institutions, where we live, whether we're in the United States. Again, they pointed out, Catherine and Han actually pointed out our African peers. So really thinking about diversity and inclusion beyond today's conference. And also, I do think that it's important that everybody builds accountable AI in a way that allows humanity to actually triumph, and instead of just all of the other cases that I will be going over. So the case for diversity for me, I don't really try to make sure that case for all of you would be applicable, but for many people that are underrepresented here would probably echo what I went through. I started in tech at 17. My first internship was at 17, right before college, where I was accepted into the EECS program at Berkeley, and I didn't stay in that program, even though I had a full ride scholarship to one of the most prestigious university in the world in engineering, and I didn't stay because I didn't feel there was inclusion in my field in the late 1990s. How tiring it is to be the first of anything in your career is very tiring. It's to be the first engineer, the first graduate of a college in your family, the first product woman in an organization, the first anything, the first female founder, the first Latina to have raised the largest seed round in all of the history of Silicon Valley. I'm not proud of that. I think I shouldn't just be the first. I actually was born in the state of Diego Rivera, and there's a lot of imposter syndrome. There's a lot of things that are happening. It happens every day. So with Diego Rivera, behind Diego Rivera, he was married to Frida Kahlo on the right. And even through her work, she talked about how hard it was to be the first. Even in her paintings, she painted her feet smaller than his feet because she felt that she wasn't accurate. It wasn't an inclusive field, not even being a painter in Mexico in the early 20th century. How is it the first? I always tell the story, and I think that there might be now employees at Twitter, but this picture was taken in 2010. The first ambassador to ever tweet in a official capacity was Arturo Sarucán, who was a Mexican ambassador to the United States. And he wanted to visit the offices. And I went to one of the founders, Bistone, in this picture, and I said, the Mexican ambassador wants to visit the offices. And he's like, go find the other Latinos or Mexican in the office. And there were 200 or maybe 300 employees, and I looked at him and I said, I'm the only one. So this is 4 years after the company had been funded, there were hundreds of employees, and I was the first Latina, I was the only Mexican. And everyone that looks more Latino or Mexican in this picture, actually, they're my friends. So I invited my friends to come and take a picture of this so that they would understand. They couldn't fathom that there weren't any more employees like ours. I think to this day for me, as an immigrant and binational, I think the best and sort of compliment I ever got was the ambassador, and who said, you've done both your countries proud. I don't know if it was a proud moment for me being the only one in a whole company that could speak his language besides the cleaning group, but I definitely hope that has changed. And that's how Atypica came from, being the first to wanting to really tackle diversity and inclusion. I'm just going to show really quick where people are always like, what is Atypica? Basically, we just provide automation and analytics, predictive analytics to companies so that they understand, and this is our own model. It is not a model, self-reporting. I decided, okay, let's do the same modeling that they're targeting loans or ads to us, and let's predict at least race and gender by open government information and aggregate resume data. So we did. Our accuracy is 96%, and we have a patent on this. So there's no one else that could ever use this for enhanced biases. We use everything that you might think about. Is there statistical significance on how women are being rejected versus men and racial groups? And are they withdrawing with statistical significance for anyone that is actually looking at? But if we go back to what if Atypica algorithms were wrong, what would we do? Would we make recommendations that were faulted? So I read Terry's book while I was sitting at the Mexican consulate last week, and thank God I'm a speed reader. So by the time I got my passport, I was able to finish the whole book. And I got a lot around the history of the conference. And of all the things that stuck to me, obviously, this would stick with me. That I think it is really important how we are handling all our data sets and how all neural networks will be biased inherently. How so? I am in HR tech, correct? I was at a conference by LinkedIn where I talked about the future of AI in recruiting. I pitched to Amazon a year and a half ago about Atypica, and pretty much they said they were building it, and I said, good luck building that. And this is what happened. They actually ended up building it, and their AI recruitment tool was killed because it started being biased against women. So mostly female universities were penalized, and if a woman put women lacrosse, women soccer, etc., it started putting them as not qualified. And these are the best or the brightest data scientists in the country, in the world probably, yet they couldn't really understand where the bias of this algorithm went into. We think about all the inputs and outputs at Atypica. As I quoted the algorithm oppressions, if you actually Google Latina girls or Latina women, there's not a picture of me as a CEO or a founder. I still believe that the algorithms of oppression and searching is actually inherently allowing our biases to be very transparent, and how we are being the world where fake news is there. As a localization professional, not anymore, but I hope to localize Atypica soon, it was really disturbing to me that their data scientists who were building the algorithms for hate speech didn't understand the importance, of localization or language, or actually internationalize their own algorithms to be inclusive towards all the types of all the countries where Facebook is in. I have had one of my angel investors actually is a pretty high-level Facebook leader, and being in this industry, I hold myself accountable, and I hold other accountables, but I don't do it to criticize, but more of, at least when I localized Twitter into Urdu or Farsi, I didn't end up dispatching over 140,000 people like they did in Myanmar. I also think as academics, we need to think about what tools are we using and all the biases. And I actually started my graduate degree, and after 2 years, I decided not to continue it as a sociologist. And I left. But we all know and we all read about all the biases in the library discovery systems. And even black robots are impacted by racism. So even if you are doing you put in a VR sort of, and you look at the black robots versus the white ones, there's even a bias by humans against the robot's color. So are we neutralizing for all of that? I was going to call him a name. Yeah, he's an asshole. So this startup founder is now helping profile and discriminate for people that look like me or children that look like me when they're or refugees of what's happening at the border in the U.S. That I don't know what I would do if I were in a room with this person, but I think that it is important that for more founders for ourselves to never negotiate or convictions for whatever tag or price tag in any deal. And I will never, ever do that. The takeaways. I think it's important to be an ally. I've had so many allies in my life. When I would go in and we crowdsourced, Twitter into the 50 languages, over 1 million translators, and we open sourced the reputation system. And when I would had all these ideas about open sourcing the reputation system to make translators better translators, and everything that we worked at, I wasn't heard at all. So my ally was in Matt, who is now my board member, but he was my ally. When I would go in there, I said, can you have my back, or at least can you talk about my idea in front of the other engineers and product? And then he would do it. He would be my ally. He would come, no one would listen to me, and then he would repeat my idea and then said, it's Laura, when they all agreed after. So being an ally is really important. I'm an ally. I don't have any children, but I have an ally to a lot of female founders who are mothers. So I try to go to events that are during the day and not dinner. And so there's allies in everywhere, and we should, as the chairs for the diversity and inclusion of the conference, is how to really understand your own privilege. And I understand my own privilege even as a female founder. I don't think inclusion as an approach. I think inclusion as an approach and not as a feature. A lot of either HR tech or any AI, they'll say, okay, we'll automate recruiting and hiring, and then we'll put a feature to minimize bias. That is not the thoughtful way to go. You also have to be inclusive. In 2016, NPR National Public Radio in the United States. They had a feature about me and diversity, and then they penalized me because I didn't have enough women in my startup of 6 people. So in 2018, I decided to change that. And now I have a female COO, I have a female head of data science, I have 2 interns that are female, and then both in data science and in business. And I have a female engineer, and I'm only 10 people. So if I can do it, I think anyone here who works for big companies can do it as well. And also inclusion thinks about everything. We think about what we don't include in our trading models. We don't have a search function in our product, and we actually neutralize for a more of an idealistic tech industry that actually has 50% technical roles for women and 50% for men. And so I've had a lot of ethical conversations with other data scientists that don't think that my approach is the best, but until we get there, maybe that's where I will renegotiate my training set. And I think it's important to work towards an ethical AI. If I would have known what I know now while I was at Twitter, would have been more thoughtful about the abuse that women and other minorities and underrepresented groups face in the platform, would have done something different. I have been on the other end of abuse on that platform, and I now understand. So I definitely think that an ethical AI should have been something that's always thought for, especially everyone in this room. And I want to give a shout out to a couple of groups that reached out to me. So this is the Deep Learning Indaba from Africa. And I think they're here. If they can, there they are. If you want to, yeah, there they are. And some of their peers obviously are not here, and I think thank you for all the work that you do about AI as inclusion for the continent of Africa. And also everyone else. I know Laura here from Latinx in AI, and everyone else that is doing a lot of the effort and emotional labor for us to move forward in this conversation. And thank you. This is my email if you want to discuss more about ethical AI and accountability. And for any reason, if you work for a company that you think could use a Typica, feel free. Or if you just want to grab maybe coffee or something, I'm leaving Wednesday. You can shoot an email. Thank you so much.
Do we have any questions? It's like I can't even see you guys.
Hi.
So thank you. Hello. So thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. You said that if you could go back to Twitter, what would you do that was different? How could you have changed Twitter?
So the first time a dictator went on the platform was Hugo Chavez from Venezuela. And when he joined, he started using Twitter and a lot to target and attack its citizens. I would have pushed for better policy on understanding what is really protected and what is free speech versus just hate speech. I would have definitely done something more to think about how democracy is in demise because of this social platform. So yes, I would have done something. Maybe I would have just done something.
Is it too late now at Twitter?
I had a conversation with Jack Dorsey about 2 or 3 months ago, just him and I about it. I think yeah. Yeah. I don't see eye to eye with Jack. I asked him 3 times how he sleeps at night, and I sleep just fine. Maybe not so much when I have to fundraise, but I sleep okay now.
Hi.
Hello.
So my name is Kathleen, and I'm part of the Deep Learning Indaba committee. And for those of you who don't know, the Deep Learning Indaba is an initiative to strengthen machine learning in Africa. And mine is not a question, more really like more a comment. And I'd just like to say a big thank you on behalf of the Indaba committee, some of who are here today, for all the work that you are doing in efforts towards diversity and inclusion. And this is to the whole NeurIPS community at large. These efforts, no doubt, contribute to the growing number of Africans and members of other underrepresented groups that are able to interact with and participate in global machine learning forums such as these. And finally, even as we continue to grow and strengthen our community, we'd like to include as many NeurIPS people as possible. At the Indaba earlier this year, we had representation from 30 African countries and 19 countries from the rest of the world. So as we aim to have all 54 African countries represented one day, we hope that the growth of this number can be directly correlated with representation from the rest of the world as well. So consider this an open invitation to visit Africa and take part in subsequent Indabas. And of course, thank you, Laura, for the talk and for all the work that you continue to do in aid of efforts towards inclusion. And yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for supporting women. We need such a woman like you that support us. But I have 2 questions. First of all, if as a CEO, just support women as, all of head rules or, just position that is good, is not some discrimination against men?
No, I hire the best. I don't think there's any discrimination to understand about inclusion. Just like I would like to hire people who are over 40 or people that don't have the fields or tech. I think there's no discrimination as much as more thoughtfulness into actually have built companies where people feel included when they come and not against men. I have amazing men in my company, so they're thoughtful, they're incredible. So I don't think it's necessarily about discrimination, but much more about inclusion.
Okay. And if there is a case that I have 2 applicants, one a man, another one a woman, and a woman is smarter than man, and I know that if I just reject the woman, she can find another job, but the man cannot find another job. So what should I do in this case?
Well, I think this hypothetical situation doesn't happen. The privilege of opportunity is very much given to men all the time. Okay. So, and I also think that as a founder, the privilege of failure. So whenever I can start 4 startups and they all fail, that's when we know women can continue being founders until then. So I think the privilege of opportunity and failure is mostly given to most men, in my experience, in the 20 plus years of being in tech.
Thank you.
And in academic, too.
Hi. So we've seen with the situation at Amazon that it can be very challenging to build these predictive analytic tools for things like recruiting. And I was wondering if you could share some of the lessons you've learned with Atypica, with how you can sort of come up with systematic ways to combat these types of issues.
I have a client that has been working with us for 1.5 years, and their applicant pool is actually now 50% women and 50% men in technical roles. I think it's important that people look at a baseline, but then actually you cannot say, okay, I want 20% Latinx in technical roles if that's not feasible on the the labor market. So I think it's important to be thoughtful about what goals are actually. I had one client who was like, can we get to 50-50 by 2020? And I shook my head and I said, no, here's the data why. So I think one of the things is not shaming anyone. I've looked at historical information of some of the biggest tech companies and non-tech, and it is really astounding, but we're very empathetic in how they want to move forward. Hence why I'm at this conference as well. How can everyone move forward? But I think we are building actually predictive onto. We've just done the basics, but we want to actually say, here's the best scenario, here's the worst scenario. But telling someone here's the worst scenario is probably not the best time right now. So we're going to go through the best scenario first before we give them the worst scenario. And we see it. We see actually systemic racial inequality among Asian applicants at the expense of gender diversity. So usually white women. So I think that's another thing that we need to start talking about as far as diversity.
Just a quick follow-up. So it sounds to me like it's not just a technological solution. It sounds to me like you have hands-on consulting as a sort of a
and I should start charging too. Yeah.
Hi, thanks. Hi. Sort of a follow-on question to that. What responsibility do you think scientists and engineers have when they build something which has bias against a group, but there's no technical solution to the problem? The model is accurate, the data is representative and true, but they're still discounting some group.
I think to have this blind trust in the data is probably in whether it's accurate, whether everything is there. I think that's the number one. Me not being a data scientist, I'm always skeptical. I'm skeptical of everything. I'm a social scientist, even though I'm a technologist at heart. I think that's the one where we all could just give a blind sort of, let's take it the race model that we have. It's 88% accurate, but there's 12% that we say, okay, we cannot know the difference between African Americans and white applicants. I might even thought my team built it. Do I trust it all the time? No, we always have to be skeptical. And I don't think that, I think there should always be an ounce of skepticism in everything that you're doing.
So you're just saying that can't happen?
No, if you show it to me, that'd be great. I don't know if that is something that can be done. Otherwise, we would have built the perfect algorithm to hire, and yet hiring is one of the hardest. So not in my, at least not in in HR tech or recruiting.
I think I have to disagree with that. I mean,
well, that's great.
There are people that have disadvantages. I grew up in a very small town with a very bad high school and a lot of opioids in a rural area. If a corporation were to design a model which discriminated against people from that high school because it'd be ineffective, it'd probably be accurate because of the failings of the school system.
Why would you discriminate against the potential of the students?
Well, no, I'm saying like it would be better to bias for someone from a nice high school. Is it the responsibility of a scientist to just not build something that does that?
That would just be the same opportunity, and so you start recycle the opportunity, and the same people will have the same opportunity. So at the end of the day, that's not true inclusion because you don't know what the potential of your high school students now versus when you were there. Okay.
I see. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi. I saw in your infographic and in the goals for inclusion that you mentioned that you talked about men and women, but do you have any plans at Atypica to include non-binary individuals?
Definitely, and I want to be able to be very thoughtful, just like we're looking into ageism and other things. I think non-binary is one of the things. New York actually just passed New York City, I think, legislation on non-binary. So I definitely think that we need to be thoughtful about how to really represent that in our modeling and also in the product itself, so that it's not just right now binary to cisgender that we were born with or in our names.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hola, Laura.
Hola.
I'm Joaquin. I'm a Latino as well. I work at Facebook on AI fairness.
You work at where?
I work at Facebook on AI fairness. Yeah, I have a question. As you built Atypica, I'd love to know what experiences you had on dealing with the tension between privacy and being able to compute metrics, because you mentioned you were building algorithms to infer people's race, for example, and I found that to be extremely problematic with some people who feel extremely uncomfortable about it. But then, of course, you can't measure if you don't have those attributes at the same time. So I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Definitely. I have an angel investor who is an employment lawyer, so I'm very thoughtful about how we're, just like maybe Uber or Airbnb, when they started doing ride sharing, or people in your homes needed the best legal information, like help. And I do think about that. I'm very thoughtful about not just me, but anyone doing AI is going to be in a court around discrimination. For Atypica, because we have a different perspective, I think it's really important to say, here's your aggregate information. I'm not going to infer Laura, or I'm sorry, your name? Joaquin. We're not going to be like just Joaquin and Laura. Really, we do aggregate information, so in that way it's much more thoughtful about the patterns and the statistical significant sort of areas that they need to focus on versus who we are.
Thank you so much. I'm going to put everybody else who has questions off to ask Laura in person. Enjoy dinner. I'll see you later.